Hello again, and welcome to another round of video analysis. My name is Monica Volkmar, and here we have our runway model for today. As per usual, let's start by looking at some static posture photos. First thing that stands out to me is some awesome sandal tan lines. All right, well, let's, for serious, take a look-see. So what is standing out initially? I'm just kind of drawn to the position of her skull for whatever reason. I'm not even quite sure how to say what I'm seeing, but I sense there's a little bit of a tilt of her right ear towards her right shoulder. So a bit of a lateral flexion through the neck, potentially to the right. And it kind of seems like there's a bit of a rotation to her left, which would give us a type 1 spinal mechanic in her neck, meaning that the rotation and the side bending are going the opposite directions, which only shows up at one phase in the gait cycle. So we'll see from a back view if that's actually what's happening. Confirm that. I sense a little bit of a pelvis shift towards her right foot, and potentially a bit of a rotation towards her right foot in her pelvis. Again, I want to state that I kind of suck at looking at transverse plane. I am always on the fence about what I'm actually seeing. I'm just going to put that caveat out there whenever I say anything, always open to being proven wrong. Now I'm looking at her feet, and I'm not sure if this is what I'm seeing, but I do have a vibe of her left foot being more everted, so more pronated, you could say, more rolled to the inside edge, and her right foot having a little more of an inversion, so being rolled to the outside edge with a bit of a higher arch. I think I'm seeing that in her left big toe as well. It looks to be a little more rolled down towards the floor, and her right big toe, the angle of the nail bed, it's like a slide that's sliding to the right. Feet can give us a bit of a clue about where the center of mass is. So if we have a right foot more inverted, left foot more everted, we might see a shift of the center of mass to the right. Let's look at the back view. And that is kind of what it looks like from the back view of her feet as well, a bit more everted on the left. A little more inverted on the right. I just want to flip back and look at her knees up to see. Okay, I'm just checking if one knee looks more bent or straight than the other. Double checking if it looks like her pelvis is rotated one way or the other. Again, I suck at this. Oh, I do see a bit of a something in her spine here. Look at the line of her lumbar spine. It looks like it's slanting over to the right. Not really a right lateral flexion per se, and maybe a tiny bit more hike on the right pelvis. A hike on the right side of the pelvis would give us a bit of an adducted right hip. So what we might be starting to observe is a body that is standing more on the right foot. I guess from the back view, I can see a bit more clearly that lateral flexion of her skull to the right and rotation to the left. Rotation to the left, to me, it looks like, because I can see more of her left ear and a bit more of her left cheek peeking out to the side. So a lateral flexion to the right with the skull and a rotation left, interestingly, is part of a right heel strike mechanic. And does kind of look like her body's in a bit of a right heel strike setup. We'll talk more about that if it shows up in her actual video. Let's go to a side view. I'm going to look at it stands up from both side views. Yeah, it does appear to me that wait, hold on. Looking at her knees. I think her right knee's a bit more extended. Yeah. Like you can see a little bit of her right knee sticking out, her calf rather, sticking out behind her left calf. So that right calf pushed back farther would be a bit more of a extended knee. And oh, this is interesting. Look at her feet. You can see there's some shadowy space under the ball of her right foot, meaning she might not be able to weight bear into the ball of her right foot, which would be something you'd want to see in a pronation. And we do see maybe a bit more contact with that first metatarsal on her left foot. Okay, so we have a straight right knee, pelvis that's kind of shifted and hiked into the right. Inverted, more, maybe not totally inverted, but a more inverted right foot. So we might be seeing someone who has a bit more of a weight distribution into the right leg, just set up mechanically to go there, as well as this spine that's doing this lean off to the right. We'll have to look at a bit more clearly what's going on there. Whoopsie. One of her complaints, by the way, is right foot discomfort, which shows up when she's dancing. So interesting, she's standing on that right foot a bit more. We can also observe from a side view just quite a bit of a lumbar curve, an extension curve, which might not be a bad thing at all. This might be her, but interesting to note. So I'm interested in this skull position and this right side kind of shift happening. I could go really too focused into this. So why don't we take a look at her walking? Why don't we? Here we go. So first time through, we're going to look real-time speed. And remember, this is my first time watching this video, so you get to hear me fumble around. I'm noticing her pelvis only rotates to the right. That's the first thing. So right, right, right. Oh, let's watch that again. Rotates right. But she doesn't quite rotate to the left. Yes, good. But let's rewind that. One more time, real speed. What else is happening with her? Can you see it kind of does look like there's a bit of a lean going on in her spine to the right, leans to the right, leans to the right. I'm not going to say it's a clean lateral flexion with her spine, but it's like a lean. Like she just kind of hangs out in that right side, maybe more in that right leg a little bit. One more time, I want to see that. There's not a lot of arm swing going on. Like it looks like there's a little bit of a hard time generally rotating through her spine. She looks like she stays rotated to the left with her rib cage and upper body. I know in her notes she sent me, she has a complaint on her her left shoulder. Don't know exactly what it is. Okay. Let's take this into slow motion. And before we do it, sip of coffee. Okay. So as we normally do, let's break it down phase by phase. Let's pop her into a right heel strike. Heel strike is when the heel first makes contact on the ground. So we're looking at this foot. See if we back her up a little bit. Her second round. I think the lighting might be a little bit better. We got her here. Yeah, let's go here. I don't know if the lighting's any better. Oh well. So what's standing out to me a little bit is kind of generally just the lack of movement in her arms. In a heel strike, kind of as the body's approaching heel strike and then rolling the foot down onto the floor, that's where we'd like to see the full swing of the arms happening. And her arms are just quiet by her sides. Her back foot is still very much down on the ground. I'm not sure if that is going to be different than her other side. Remember, we always need to put this into context of comparing the right and left side. So there's nothing too much to say until we see the other side. Something stands out to me about this arm as looking awkward. Just the angle that it's rotated at. It looks too externally rotated to me. When the right leg is swinging forward, you want to see her left arm swinging backwards. And when the arm swings backwards into extension, we want to see also an internal rotation in her humerus. So I don't know if we're seeing that rotation happening. And I know she has I think it's the left shoulder, not the right shoulder. So I don't know if that's relevant at all. Anyway, let's go into a front foot pronation, which I believe is right about there. Oh, it's still going. Right about there. We have our right foot fully pronated. So what are we seeing that is ideally organized? We have a pelvis that's hiking on the right. That's awesome. It looks like she is standing fully on that leg. Again, there's not too much swing in her arms, but it looks like she doesn't have opposition here in the transverse plane in her spine. So it does look like her pelvis is rotating to the left, which is awesome. But what we'd want to see is her rib cage rotating to the right. And we're not seeing that. It looks more like this side of her body is still pointing backwards, meaning that she's rotating to the left. So we're missing, potentially, we're always looking for what's missing. We're missing here spine, rotation, right. If a spine is rotating to the left, just think about what that's going to do to her left shoulder area. So if the spine's rotating left, it's gonna, and this arm is just, it's kind of doing nothing. So if spine is rotating towards her left arm, it's going to protract her left scapula and internally rotate her arm, her glenohumeral joint, her shoulder joint. So with every step that she takes, she might just be always kind of bumping into that, which can cause a bit of a shortness in the pec area, maybe a bit of excessive like length in the rhomboid area. I'm not sure what her actual shoulder issue is she's experiencing. We'll compare her right foot with her left foot when we get there to her other side. Let's continue along into mid stance. So as her left foot swings through to come next to her right foot, we want to see a stacked up neutral, quote unquote, body. She's still a little hiked on the right of her pelvis. Her foot is still a little bit pronated when we want to see it start to supinate. So does her foot, here's the pronation. Does it start to change? No. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever really watched one of these videos and been awed by someone's ability to supinate in mid stance. So welcome to the rest of humanity. Welcome to my life. Okay, so not a whole lot of supination action happening here. What we'd like to see is her pelvis rotating to the right. It looks like it does. She gets out of a, yeah, she kind of gets her pelvis to rotate to the right. That's nice. And let's just carry on, because there wasn't too much to say there. Into a left heel strike. And now a left heel strike, we want to see, if we're still watching her right leg, we want to see how this heel lift moment in time goes. When the heel strikes on the left, we want to see a lift in the heel on the right, and the beginnings of the pelvis shifting towards the striking leg. So we can see, does her pelvis shift to the left? I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. It does look, however, like this foot doesn't supinate quite as well as her left foot was when it was behind her. I'm just watching her right arm. It swings forward a little bit, but her left arm doesn't really swing backwards that much. Okay. Now, another thing in her history, or not history, her complaints list was her calves get tight and her feet get sore, especially the right one. So we're seeing this right foot not really supinating, or I don't want to say not really supinating. It's not really supinating, but in particular, I'm not seeing much of a lift in the heel, which kind of gives the impression that she's still mostly standing on her right foot when her weight ought to be traveling to her left foot. As we move her along into her pronation on the left foot. So here's the vibe I'm getting. I want you to think about, does it look like her pelvis is sliding into her left foot, or is she pushing herself there with her right foot? Right there. To me, it looks like she is pushing off of her right foot. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but in an effortless gait, it's more like a fall forwards with the pelvis into the front foot. And it takes a little bit more effort to use a concentric muscle strategy during what should be an effortless flowing motion. So when we see this vibe of she's pushing with that calf, those plantar flexor muscles, red or shortening, like all this stuff back here, it looks like she's pushing off of it to get into that left foot. So maybe a bit more activity in that right calf as the gastrocnemius and soleus and all those posterior muscles have to contract instead of chilling out and just trusting that you got a left foot there that can catch you. Second thing I want to say about that, and again, this is just my speculating. I don't want to make up a story, but I'm always making up stories in my head. Story of my life. Anyway, she might have this, as we noticed in her static posture, a bit of an adduction, the right hip. So if she can't abduct, let's just say we can suspect that she might be missing some right hip abduction, so being able to get out of that leg. If she is missing that, that's an arrow down, by the way. If she's not abducting her hip, that means it's going to be really hard to get her pelvis to leave that leg, which means she might need to push with this foot a little harder to do it. Does that resonate with you? Just talking to our model. Anyway. Okay, well, let's just park that thought and go into her pronation phase. Which, when she's getting into this phase, I also see like this, that's where a lot of extension in her spine looks like it happens. So it looks like there's a bit of an oomph to get her into that left foot, like ankle pushes and then also her spine extends. Interesting. So could there be some kind of left-sided deficit in shock absorption, like just not trusting that that leg can receive her weight, so having to do a little bit more concentric activity through here and through here. I don't know if she has any lower back complaints now or in the past. Okay. And this foot does seem to pronate a bit more quickly. So if we go back to the right foot swinging through, it just kind of, it goes through a longer period through which it pronates. Like it goes and then it doesn't stop until about there. Not saying that's better or worse, that's just kind of what's happening. But then the left foot just, it has a much shorter period of time through which it pronates. Okay, so I'm questioning right now these left leg mechanics that are able to catch her as she lands on her left leg. Did anything happen to her left ankle? That would be a question for me. Let's see what happens when she goes into mid stance. Talk about concentric vibes. It looks like she's picking up that leg with more muscle effort than is needed. So her right leg picking up looks like a real contraction in the hip flexors. When what we'd want is more like an elastic band momentum sort of situation where her hip flexors here on the right have reached their end lengthening that they'll get in her stride. And that lengthening, that eccentric load, it's like a slingshot that should catapult this leg forward. But instead of that, it looks very labored and contracty. Contracty is totally a word. So she does look level here with her shoulders and her pelvis. It just doesn't look as easy for her to do that. That might be the case if this left foot is unable to supinate, because we noticed it's a bit more everted at rest. So instead of that contributing to her moving into her mid stance, it's a bit more of a right leg being an effortful limb to swing her leg forward, get her into her right heel strike again. Just kind of look at the ease with which she just sits into her right hip. Like if you could describe the quality of that, it's more like a versus if we go back to when her left leg swings through, it's more of like a ding. I'm making sound effects because that's what I do in my mind. It's more of a like a yeah, there's my right hip versus where's my left hip? Let's find it. Interesting. So I want to say that I kind of want to stop it here because my last video went on for about 50 minutes and I don't know if that was useful. So we're going to keep this one shorter and I'm going to leave us with a few questions. So I want to know, there was a few things about the arms I was curious about. Now I'm forgetting what they were, but I'm remembering what her hips were doing. So I want to ask about her right hip. There looks like there's a bit of a stuck on it in adduction situation. I'm still kind of unclear about the transverse plane. So whatever you heard me say about the transverse plane, I'm not too sure what's happening with the pelvis, but it looks like she's stuck in a position like this, with the pelvis shifted to the right, hiked on the right, which is keeping her stuck short through her adductors on the right. And as it relates to her right foot having some issues, just think about if you're always standing on a right foot, it might tend to get a little cranky after a while. Now, I do recall when she was, where was that? I think it was in her, yes, right there where we wanted her rib cage to be rotating, whoops, to the right. She was staying rotated to the left instead. And yes, that's the thing with the shoulder is, can your rib cage, spine, oops. Come on, let me write the thing. Rib cage and spine. Can you rotate right? And can your left arm, glenohumeral, aka shoulder, can you externally rotate and swing forward? Because it looks like it doesn't. Let's just watch that again a little bit in real time. Yeah, that, interestingly, both arms don't really swing a whole lot, but yeah, I don't know if I can say one or the other swings more or less. But that left rib cage rotation is standing out at me. And I wonder if that's related to why your left shoulder has some complaints. So we'd want to ask about that rib cage rotation and just generally, can your left arm rotate externally? And that would be an assessment I'd want to look at. And maybe, can your left foot supinate? in a left foot supination, or if her foot can't supinate and it's pronating really quickly like we saw, then she might not have the ability to just be as confident on that leg. So we're seeing a lack of shock absorption mechanics, which is also part of the pronation phase. So can you pronate or supinate your left foot? Did anything happen injury-wise with your left ankle that's causing your body to kind of have this shifted to the right with a more supinated right foot, pronated left foot? Those are the questions I am left with. Again, not looking for solutions just now, just raising awareness of what's going on structurally, knowing this doesn't really tell us what are the problems, if you want to use that language. So that's it for today. Hopefully this was useful. If you saw stuff that you'd like to point out, especially if you see stuff in the transverse plane, please help me out with that. That's an area that I need to, I don't want to use the word need. I would really enjoy getting more confident in what I'm seeing in the transverse plane. So your observations are always welcome. Pop them into YouTube below this video. And I'll follow up with some of our lovely volunteers' feedback. And you can see that in the comment section on YouTube as well. Thanks for watching. I will see ya. Oh, I won't see you, but you'll hear the sound of my voice in a video soon.